That was a nice snap, NJ. All the way from January to now. How have you been?
I've
Have you
been
been?
great, man. I'm
Yeah,
excited to do this February recap in
in March.
March.
In March.
Is it this a week into March? We just got busy, man. You know,
Yeah, life's been hectic right now, for
it's
sure.
true.
But we definitely want to get together. We've been saying once a month at the least
We'll still
for
get
a
it.
full
We'll still get
episode.
it.
Yeah.
We still have all of March to record a March episode. We won't wait till April. Promise. Promise.
You know what else we won't wait for? The intro.
The intro. Yes,
This
welcome to Boys on the Edge.
Yes, episode 2 of season 2. On the second take, because you guys may never see the first take of me thinking this was still the season premiere of season 2.
Pretty much. Yeah, Brian forgot that we recorded in January and
It's been a while.
we
It's
were
been a
talking
while.
about a $10 million statue. And yeah, we talked about yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of
You're
interesting
right. You're
things happened
totally
in
right.
January.
Oh my god. Now I feel really dumb for being all defensive like 10 minutes ago.
You got really defensive, dude. When you
Well, I got
really believe
angry.
in
Okay,
something,
I won't harp on it, right? But I got angry thinking like it's been so long. This is the start of season 2, right? No, we're continuing on from what we started at the start of the year.
Brian thought I was gaslighting him, like I usually do. And he got really defensive. But it's okay, man. It's okay. We're episode 2, recapping February. January is very eventful in good and bad ways. But
Mhm.
February, I don't think February was that eventful, was it?
Not so much. I mean, there's stuff that's been happening this year and
Uh,
recently, that's worth talking about, I think. What would you like to start on?
let's talk about to Chris Rock came out with a new Netflix special.
Yes. And actually this is almost appropriate, right? Like it wasn't our first episode, but like our third episode. I forget already when we
The
when we covered the
slapping. I don't
Will
remember. It
Smith
was a while
slap.
ago.
We covered the Will Smith slap a long time ago, right? This is essentially Chris Rock's response to that whole thing. What did you
Almost a year
think?
later. I thought it was great. I thought it was great. Chris Rock is he's a great comedian. Um, but his jokes are more of, you know, strong chuckles for me. I guess that's how I see it.
Hmm.
It's nothing bad. He's not a bad comedian. Um, but it was a great setup. I didn't expect him to end with the Will Smith the Will Smith issue. I thought he was going to start with the Will Smith issue.
Yeah, I think he knew everybody's there to hear him talk about that, right? So if we're going to talk about it, let's make it big, make it the ending. That makes
I'm glad
sense.
he talked about it though,
Mhm.
and not just kind of sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, yeah.
Because some people sweep it under the
It
rug.
took a lot, I'm sure, to be as quiet as he's been for what's basically been a year, right?
Yeah. Well, he kind of explains why.
Yeah, dude. And he talked about something that really like touched me a little bit, right?
Hmm.
He talked about growing up and admiring Will Smith, like watching like all his movies, listening to his music, and I felt the same way. Like, I don't know how many episodes of The Fresh Prince of Bel Air you ever watched or how much you knew about it, but I loved that show. It
Hmm.
was so much fun, and then I loved watching him in like his other movies growing up as well. And yeah, it's like
Men in Black.
it took that one night just to completely turn his image into this completely different person.
Yeah, it was interesting because he always, I don't know, he just seemed like a peaceful guy. Like
Hmm.
you didn't expect him to react that way.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's sad. And I could, just looking at how Chris Rock set it up, like he wasn't even saying jokes while he was setting it up, that section. Like he was just talking about how, he looked up to him, but now I guess there is one joke. Now he watches Emancipation just to see Will Smith get beat up. Um, which is interesting, because he was again, Will Smith is you didn't expect him to be that guy to react that way. Um, yeah, and getting more background about why Chris Rock said the joke to uh to Jada, that was
Hmm.
interesting too, that there's a lot more to the story rather than just picking on Jada. There's a lot more to the story than that.
Yeah, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't fully understand it
Uh-huh.
because Chris was going to host the Oscars. Um, I don't know, a few years back,
Hmm.
and I think it was on the same time that a bunch of black actors were going on strike.
Uh-huh.
Jada asked him. to not host because Will wasn't nominated for Best Actor.
Uh-huh.
And Chris just like, he took that personally, right? But then to respond to that with the joke, I didn't really get the connection. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm not blaming Chris for anything. But that was his
Yeah.
explanation, right? Like, unless you understood it a little bit better, like there was something personal going on between them. And
Yeah.
that manifested into a joke that he said on live TV that led to the slap.
And then Will got really mad.
Mhm.
Really well, yeah. You know the story. We all know the story. It's been months. Close to
Yeah.
a year now. It's been close to a year, so it's interesting that Chris timed the response. Which I think he also knows that there's a lot going on with Will, right? Like,
Oh, I'm sure. There's always something going on with Will.
yeah.
I imagine, without getting too much into it, because that would just be celebrity gossip. I imagine his life isn't as peaceful as we may once have thought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I
know.
mean, being in Hollywood, man,
Yeah. What
with
else did
some
Chris
friends
talk
in
about?
Hollywood.
What else did Chris talk
Um,
about?
growing up, poor.
Yeah,
Growing up poor
tell
was
me
interesting.
tell me how did that make you feel hearing about somebody wanting to raise their kids differently than the situation they were raised in, while
Uh,
also trying to maintain the lesson of humility and respect and
uh,
having to earn your way in life versus thinking your parents, your friends, your money, whatever it is going to help you skate through. Like, tell me what you thought about that.
um, I get the point of raising your kids not in a spoiled way, but to have a better life than you did. I
Mhm.
don't get the point of some parents wanting their kids to suffer like they did. Like what does that do exactly? Right?
Mhm.
Like, what it would I don't get that. Like what does that teach? What does that do for the kid? Um, it's like that's like take it to the extreme, if you had a life that where you were abused growing up, not just like you got hit because you were, whenever you got in trouble, but like you literally got abused every single day, physically and emotionally. Like why would you want that for your kid, right? Just because you were raised a certain way doesn't mean that your kids have to be raised that way.
Mhm.
um I feel like I feel a lot of people work hard so that way they can have a better life for their kids. I just don't get the whole let's make them suffer the way we
Yeah. And where I'm wondering how you feel about this, where um, I guess feel a bit, slightly more passionate about it. And Chris didn't talk about this, but just want to hear your opinion on it. Growing up in a situation that's easier for Chris's kids, let's say they're black. They
Hmm.
grew up in a very good situation with a very rich dad. They could get anything they needed, they wanted, because the parents were there to provide for that. That doesn't make them any less black than the kids who may grow up in the inner city in the less well-funded or the less funded areas of the city. I think
Hmm.
that goes for Hispanic kids. I think that goes for any kids of color that maybe through high school and college they're trying, sorry, and maybe through high school and college they're trying to find somewhere they belong, somewhere some like group that they can fit into.
Hmm.
And when they learn about other people, other kids of color, how they grew up, and maybe they grew up a little bit harder, maybe it can feel hard to relate. And in some cases that I've actually seen going to school, a long time ago, but still seeing it is being called out for not being hood enough, not using enough slang, not presenting in a way that supposedly is to be for Hispanic kids or black kids, for in my case, that in my mind, for even certain Indian kids that were going to my college. It's like they were looking for, and in Asian kids too, they were looking for this like niche of where to fit in. But
Hmm.
what influenced that sometimes was where you grew up and how comfortable, or in some cases uncomfortable, you grew up, right? How much you had to struggle.
That's so interesting because it's like essentially what that's saying is that part of being black is essentially you have to be poor,
Yeah.
right? Part of being a colored person, or a person of a colored person versus person of color, whole different meaning. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, same words, different connotation. Part of being a person of color is that you have to be poor, which doesn't make any sense because
Mhm.
there's really poor white people. Like if you go to Alabama, those are really poor white people, right? So
Alabama, the Midwest, like
yeah,
poverty is not a it's not a person of color exclusive thing.
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I mean it's not a person of color. It's not an immigrant, an immigrant exclusive type of thing. It's not exclusive to any group of people. Um, it's like you go to the South, there's a lot of poor white people in the South,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of poor white people in there's a lot of poor white people in England. They're all white, right? So I don't know. It's just it's interesting to that attaches because I see that. I see when I talk to people sometimes, like one of my roommates, what does she say? She said, "Oh, you talk smart. You don't talk like a person of color,
Yeah,
right? You talk
I've heard
smart."
that before too.
I was like, "Excuse me." I was like, "What does that mean? Like I talk
Yeah.
smart? Like I just talk like yeah, I think we had a similar. Well, I got
Yeah.
it when I was older. You got it when you were younger, right?
Um, yeah, how old is your story?
This was like 2 years ago.
Mine happened in 2017, 2018.
Uh-huh.
I was hanging out with this chick who was Indian, as far as I knew, like 100% Indian. Um, and she noticed that, and I'm just for background, I'm Peruvian, 100%, but I was born here in a relatively, let's just say, whitewashed
Mhm.
community way, whatever. I don't use a lot of slang. I don't talk that way. I don't know. Just imagine the way cool kids talk. I just don't feel like I talk like a cool kid, whatever that means. I have like this own way that's like interpreted in my head.
She didn't hear the way. No mames way.
That's one example, right? Like that's more of a Mexican thing. But if you're Hispanic growing up in
But that's hood
California, there's
Hispanic. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
if you're
hood
Hispanic growing up in
Hispanic.
California, you're gonna hear mostly Mexican slang. It's just how
Yeah.
it is.
Chingana way.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I hear. Yeah, I mean that's what I heard, that's what I heard. So she told you that you weren't
Right.
hood enough or that you
Yeah,
weren't
well,
Mexican
she,
enough.
she
What
didn't
did
tell
she
me I
say?
wasn't hood enough. Just to like I talk like no, that's what it was. I talk like a white guy. That's what she
It's
said.
so interesting. Like
Which is like
what
the same. It's the same thing, right? But even like now, instead of saying you don't talk like you're brown, you don't talk like you're Hispanic, actually putting another label on it that's even more racist than when it's saying the
yeah.
other thing, right? You
Yeah.
you talk like a white guy. Like what do white people talk like?
Yeah, well, okay. Well, that insinuates that you talk educated.
Yeah, sorry,
And
that's a whole other point to it, right? Like the whole stigma of, I guess, talking like you're white means you're concise. You talk a bit slower. You use maybe slightly more impressive vocabulary. I don't know.
that was really impressive vocabulary, Brian.
That was not impressive vocabulary. I would have said vernacular, but
That was
whatever.
vernacular. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Whatever.
I don't use vernaculars. I
But
got
even I don't think I talk with impressive words like that, right? It's this is just how I talk. And I was just being myself.
Mhm.
And myself to this girl apparently did not fit the mold that she thought a lot of Hispanic people fit into.
But see, that's racism at its.
I
Isn't that
know, I
racism at
know.
its
Yes.
core?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't
Isn't
matter
that yeah?
it doesn't matter who has the prejudice or who has the stereotype in their head. It's a little bit racist. And like not like violently racist. It didn't stop me from going to school, right? I didn't like, oh my God, I gotta quit school. I can't be here. It's so racist. I didn't do that. It was like, and I know a lot of people that would have. Let's just put it that way, right? It was just frustrating to hear, but I didn't do anything about it at the time. Right? I
Mhm.
didn't respond. I didn't get angry. Just kind of like, oh, cool, thanks,
Yeah.
whatever.
But that's
I
interesting
knew
that she didn't see it as racist.
no, dude, and that's how a lot of liberals are. They're the what's the phrase? They're the kettle calling the pot black or whatever. Like
Yeah.
they're so two-faced, double standard in so many different things. But and race in particular is just like the classic one they've been using for years.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's interesting because essentially because you hear people on that on the left talk about um how if someone is black or Hispanic voting Republican, they're whitewashed. Because apparently you have to be white or white centric to have conservative views.
Yeah, fun fact: a record number of Hispanic and Black individuals voted for Republicans these past midterms,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
especially, and not just like in the, I don't know, the expected states where there's a lot of Hispanics. It's like in Florida, the South.
yeah. But that's
Yeah,
what
southern
racism
states.
is, dude. Like if you really think about it, you're looking at someone based on their skin color, based on what they look like, and saying this person has a set of beliefs and habits because of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I have a friend who one time I told him my mom's a Trump supporter, and he's like, "Isn't your mom Hispanic? Isn't she?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything.
It's
Why does our race? When did our race become so inherent with our political views? And if we go against them, like, why is everyone so surprised?
yeah.
I don't
Would
know.
you vote for him now?
Huh?
That's the question. I actually wanted to ask you right now. I'm catching you off guard. Would you vote for him now?
Who's him?
Trump. He's
Would I
running.
vote for? Would I vote for Trump right
Yeah.
now?
2024. He's running. He just announced it, right?
I don't know, but I for sure wouldn't vote for Biden.
Mm, depends on who the nominees are.
I for sure wouldn't vote for Biden, and I wouldn't vote for any Democratic candidate that comes out of this current pool of, popular Democrats. Gavin
Yeah.
Newsom, help. Who else is a famous Democrat?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. Okay, Doug. Never. Thank you. Kamala Harris, AOC, Bernie Sanders, um, Ilhan Omar, if she ever wants to be more than a congresswoman and not losing committees. My point stands. I mean, I don't even think people in California would think that Gavin Newsom's the best person to be president right now.
Why would you say that? I mean,
I think
everybody likes all the Democrats that I talked to like Gavin Newsom.
the fact that we had a recall election is enough proof to me to show that there's a lot of people in this state that don't support what Gavin Newsom is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard enough good things from the people who do support him to convince me. If anything, it's convinced. I used to be kind of a Gavin Newsom supporter, kind of by proxy, being more of a liberal, democratic leaning person. It's changed over the last couple of years, last year specifically, actually. And all I want is this state to have a leader who has the state's interests in mind. This is getting into like a kind of a different topic, but that's what I want out of a governor. That's the reason why I don't like him. I don't think he has the state's best interests in mind.
What do you think? Is he a Trudeau that only thinks about himself and his uh his winning elections?
I think.
What do you think? I wonder. I wonder. I'm curious about your opinions on Gavin Newsom.
Well, to be honest, I don't like him because the things that I know he doesn't do and the things that apparently he does do, they don't hold up. Like the biggest thing I've heard is that the Gavin Newsom's like big on education. And from what I understand, a lot of people are leaving California right now. I think California's population dropped by 500,000 over the past year. And a lot of those people leaving are families.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people leaving want something better for their kids, not only in terms of education, but culture.
Mm-hmm.
And as beautiful as California is, and as hard as it would be to think about moving anywhere else because of the scenery, because of the location, I can see that starting to I can see the what's the word the stick part starting to poke the bears of
Mm-hmm.
California who really don't want to put up with this wokeness, this Democrat agenda anymore. It's another reason why we brought up Chris Rock, right? Is because Chris Rock is just the latest celebrity out of some, I would say, some somewhat famous names who are starting to come out against what typically I would say are leftist liberal agenda items. And what was I going to say about that? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
But it's interesting because the left has gone so left with this woke thing
Mm-hmm.
that
That's what it was. That's what it was.
yeah.
I wanted to point out that it's not just citizens; it's actual like influencers and celebrities that are starting to speak out a bit more.
Mhm.
Um, there's one in particular that I talked to you about this morning about that a former YouTuber.
Jeffree Star.
Yeah, we don't have to bring it up right now. Like, do you want to
Yeah, we
talk
can. I
more
want to
about
talk about
this?
Jeffree Star. Yeah, no, because Jeffree Star was very like left leaning, right? She was,
He
he was very left. Sorry,
And that's
he.
important. That's important though,
It's
because
important, yeah,
Jeffree
because he,
Star believes
yeah,
in a gender binary.
yeah, he does.
Despite
He
how he
does.
dresses and all of his makeup and his hair dye and
It's just
whatever.
drag. I mean, there was
Yeah.
before the whole pronoun gender thing. There was just dudes that were drag,
Mhm.
right? And it was a thing. Like it wasn't, you know, there were drag shows. There've been drag shows for decades, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but it's yeah. I think what did he say? He
So
watched the
he
videos, I
had an
think.
interview recently. Not so much agreeing with conservatives, but
Mhm.
talking about why some conservatives, are starting to like Jeffree Star.
Uh-huh.
So I think everybody would know who Jeffree Star is, but quick recap, right? Former famous YouTuber, lived in LA, moved out to like Wisconsin or the Midwest to own a ranch, and
Known
is
for
recently
makeup.
started becoming a bit more internet relevant
Hmm.
because of his comments. And in a recent interview, he said that he thinks that the whole multiple gender system where you could like there's more than two genders is stupid, which we agree with 100%. It's nonsensical, it's unnecessary.
Hmm.
Um, but if we say something like that, if you say it, if I say it, we're being homophobic, we're being transphobic, we're being discriminatory, hateful, hurtful, all these things. But someone like Jeffree Star, who says who is and says he is a biological male, but likes to wear his hair long, likes to wear color in his hair, lipstick, makeup, dresses, all that stuff, heels. He said this. Jeffree Star said this. You need somebody like me to say it.
Hmm.
It's true, and that's a big reason why I started getting into some of these other groups online that I shouldn't have said that. It makes me sound weird. I started following other groups that
It's
include
still
people with
sounding weird.
LGBT but don't
Uh-huh.
agree with what is a common liberal leftist agenda right now.
Yeah, well, it's the woke agenda, man. It's that woke, those woke beliefs, that I think it's everything that you used to believe. Here's the thing, what I noticed about woke beliefs is that everything that we used to believe, we need to change it,
Mhm.
right? Because it's traditional. I
Yeah.
think at the core of woke belief, I think that's it, you know?
Yeah, that makes that was the whole point, right? Because we've been asleep to everything. We've just been
Yeah.
letting it like go past us without much hesitation, without much questions, and then people started waking up, right? They
Hmm.
started seeing it for what it really is. They started seeing capitalism as this evil system that actually breeds selfish, greedy societies rather than an actual flourishing, successful society. We look at our history and how white people have always been the agitator, the devils, the
Hmm.
ones who cause all the misery, the pain to the people of color of the world.
That's so interesting. That's such an interesting, that right there is such an interesting thought to me because, if you actually study history, there's been, like obviously white people, Europeans, they've had their fair share, and I'm not saying that didn't happen, but there's also thousands of years before that where it was, you know, the Native Americans fighting for land here. I mean,
Mm.
what is that? What's that?
Yeah,
That
I love the people that have like you're on native land on their shirts and their hats or
yeah.
their backs or whatever. Like you're on native land, you're on stolen land,
I'm like,
and
didn't they steal it from other natives?
yeah,
Like,
the rebuttal, all right, the rebuttal is like stolen from who exactly? From this
yeah,
tribe or the other tribe that had it before them? What were
yeah,
they
like,
doing? Like they were just, hunting and gathering. They were living a very rural life, obviously, a very rustic rural life. I don't even know
mhm.
if those are the right words. But I don't know, like what are people trying to say? Like, was there a better way to handle it, or would they prefer like nothing in our society as it is right now should stand?
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like you don't really know what they're saying when they say you're standing
Yeah,
on
they don't
native
have a
land.
goal. They don't
They're
have
just
anything in
saying
mind.
it.
All they want to do is make people feel bad.
Yeah.
But there's no
Yeah.
solution, no reasonable solution that they could possibly
Well,
offer.
I think one thing that I have heard is that we should let the natives, right, the descendants of natives, um, determine what we should do with this land, which is interesting because which natives, like the natives that stole it from the other tribe, or the ones that owned it before that, or who owns this land? Like, how does that even
Just
work?
like general Native Americans that we find. Like if your neighbor's Native American, get them on the list. You made it. You get to pick out your own building.
But yeah, like
Rising
which tribe?
rising rising hawk, you get to pick out the Walgreens or the CVS. Which one do you want? Both of them used to belong to your great great grandparents on those fields. They're now parking lots. You can have them.
That's true. Yeah, that's so fascinating to me. It's your own native land, which by the way, I don't everybody is on stolen land. Wherever you stand, you're on stolen land because someone can lay claim to a land anytime and then you can say that they stole it. Like, how do you even claim, by the way, how do you even claim land?
Ask
Like,
Russia.
huh? Yeah, Russia's in stolen land. Guess who they stole it from? The natives in Russia, the
How do you
natives of
steal
that
land,
area.
right? How do you steal land? I don't know. How do you steal land now, first of
Well, how do
all?
you own land? Number one, like think about it. Like, let's say you get to a place and no one has ever stepped foot on that before. Like, how do you own that land? Like, how do you
That
say,
was the whole issue with the I think both the Louisiana Purchase and the oh my God, it's when the US basically bought the Western territories
mm-hmm,
from Mexico. I don't Mexico had never been up there. They had no idea it was up there. Same thing with Alaska. I think
mm-hmm.
that was just like very similar story. Like we bought it for pennies on the dollar compared to the resources and everything that we got out of that land, right?
Yeah. Because it's interesting because you can't own it, right? Like it's unless you have a border and a way to secure that border and a way to make sure that that there's other people that know that this is your border and there's a way to secure it. You can't own land that you just found. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? I can't like just lay claim to a piece of land.
But I feel like that's talking about how land property and land what's the word? Land ownership. Yeah, land ownership used to be back then. Now it's like you can't just walk up to land and take it for
Sure,
yourself,
you
right?
can't. Well, yeah, you can't take it. Well, you can't even take it back then. Like that's the whole argument, right? Like, what is it really stolen land? Because they stole it from someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so stolen land that got stolen from someone else, like, is that stolen? Like, who owns this land?
Yeah, it's just it feels too complicated to take all these questions and just take it all the way back to why people are evil. They should have never done it in the first place.
That's the point being, right? It's too complicated of a question that one sentence, "You're standing on stolen land," doesn't answer.
Yeah, it's just a complaint.
Yeah, it's just a complaint that
A
doesn't make
complaint that
any sense.
accomplishes nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's what woke is. That's what woke is. It doesn't accomplish anything. They don't have this logic, number one, in terms of their beliefs. Not even the whole, like, oh, what they're saying is logical, but there's no logic to their beliefs. Like, think about the woke belief about gender,
Mhm.
right? They say that gender is a spectrum or gender doesn't exist. It's a made up thing, right? But then at the same time, they say gender doesn't exist, but at the same time, there's a spectrum to it. Well, how can something that doesn't really exist have a spectrum to it?
Yeah, it's like it's a construct, but it has limits. It has
As a
finite bounds. It has apparently specific descriptors for this spectrum because like a spectrum isn't just a range, right? It's like the color spectrum. Every
Mhm.
point on the spectrum is actually something,
Yeah.
right? But when you look at gender slash sex, like human sex, all you really have is, right, to our opinion, right? Boys and girls, everything. Wait, boys? Sorry, boys and girls. Everything
Mhm.
from like boys to the middle is still boy, but just a very specific type of boy.
Mhm.
Maybe they like Barbies. Maybe they like surfing. Maybe they
Mhm.
like bodybuilding. Maybe they like makeup. I don't know, but
Mhm.
that's still a boy. Same thing on the other side. Girl and to the center, everything's girl. still all girls. They just are all different girls.
But see, even that, like the common the old way of thinking about boys and girls, that wasn't even like, oh, if you liked certain things, you were a boy, or if you like certain things, you were a girl. It was what biologically what you have, like your genitalia is what determined if you're a boy. And if you're a boy that likes dolls, then you're just a weird boy. You're just a boy that likes dolls and likes girl things. But that doesn't change the fact that you're a boy.
Yeah.
That was
I
right? Wouldn't you
yeah,
agree
I
that
don't
that would be
see
the
yeah, I don't
idea?
see any disagreement there. Um
But it's
yeah,
your
I don't see
genitalia
any
that
disagreement
determines.
there. Only that I wouldn't. I guess now I'm trying to not call boys who play with dolls weird per se. More like
I'm not saying they're weird,
um,
but that's what they would see it as back then. I'm not saying that I played with dolls, dude. Like I had Bratz dolls when I was growing up.
yeah.
Tell you that?
You never told me that. I guess what I was trying to get at is not not that I'm trying to make myself look better, but just to solidify the point that, like you just said, that boy may like playing with dolls. Unfortunately, he may be made fun of by other boys who think that playing with dolls is for only for girls.
Yeah, that's what they would think. Yeah, that's what they
Yeah,
would think back then. Not that that boy is actually weird, but that's what they would think back then, that that boy is weird for playing with dolls. But it still
but
didn't.
still a boy.
Still a boy. Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
that person's still a boy.
Hmm.
Which, by the way, people thought I was weird for playing with Bratz dolls. Um, I wanted to belong, man. Every girl
See,
my
it
school had
sounds like it was
Bratz.
inappropriate, but actually you just like made them fight all the time.
I just wanted to make more friends.
Mm,
And I guess I couldn't relate to the boys all that much. So I bought the boys' brats. I didn't buy
mhm.
the girls' brats. I bought the boys' brats so I could play with the girls that had the girls' brats.
That's so
And
funny. I did something kind of similar. I once realized that girls really liked like Ed Sheeran back when he was
uh-huh.
like first getting popular. I think I was in like high school or middle school, and it really did work. One time it did work, but the rest of the times it didn't. Whenever I was near a cute girl or the girl that I thought was cute at school, I would start humming an Ed Sheeran song like Lego House.
I think we were just trying to get girls
I think we were
at a young
just
age.
I think we were just horned up, but we thought we were being clever.
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
think so.
Anyway, so
I
yeah, I would see like a cute girl, I would try to hum like Lego House or something. One time it did work. Actually, like she actually turned around and like, hey, is that Ed Sheeran? Like, wow, cool.
like, wow, cool. Can we sleep together now? But that didn't
Yes,
happen.
that was exactly what happened.
That's
I'm gonna stick with
in your brain. That's what's going on, right? Like,
it.
oh, you're playing with Bratz dolls? Okay, let's make out in the back. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. I
Fortunately, no.
They still didn't play with
Unfortunately.
me. They still didn't play with me. They were just like, oh yeah, Bratz, cool, and they played wherever. But anyways, back to the point, right? Like, yeah, that was the whole belief back then, right?
Hmm.
Like there were certain set of things that boys typically liked, right? Most boys liked, and there were certain set of things that girls liked. And if you're a boy, right, we people expect that that's what you like, the things that boys liked. And if you're a girl, you like the things that girls liked. And it wasn't novel to see a girl liking toy trucks. It wasn't novel for someone to see a boy liking, girl things, and doing these things that be considered girly. That wasn't anything novel. I mean, you know, that wasn't anything new, at least from what I've experienced. Nobody got beat up for it or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but see, that's the problem. It's traditional, and woke is very against traditional, right? That's why they think logic is there's this idea, a very weird idea in academics, that logic, right? The process of like, if A and B, then C, that process is actually it's a colonial thing.
Really.
It's like a white thing.
Logic
Which
is
is
a
weird.
white thing.
Yeah. That's when I was in college, I heard that. And when I heard that, I was like, that's really woke,
Hmm.
right? They're like, oh, you can't use logic because it's a white thing. And I'm like,
And what do you use?
I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm like, okay, like logic is just a process, right? But that's
Yeah.
those types of beliefs, they're very woke. That's why when people have that show, What is a Woman, right? Or that movie, What is a Woman?
Hmm.
And you ask the professor what is a woman, and they couldn't answer,
Yeah. There was
right?
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just interesting because they don't have an answer. Like if you tell them, okay, if gender is a construct and it doesn't really matter, why are we putting so much effort for it to matter?
Mhm.
Right? Like that doesn't make any sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Making things like gender and race your qualifiers is not a good thing.
The
It's
pronouns.
definitely not something that people in a, let's just say people in a successful society would aim to do. They would
Because
talk
yeah,
about
there's more
they
to
would
it.
talk
Yeah.
about what actually makes them qualified, what actually makes them better, you know? There's that competitive side to our how do I say this? I would say capitalism, but let's be more specific. There's a competitive side to, I guess, this stage in our adulthood, right? We're trying to get jobs, we're trying to stick out, we're trying to make money, we're trying to do all those things, and it seems like a lot of people have instead chosen to do those things not by merit, but rather by what they feel like they deserve for being a victim, or what they feel like their entire collective group of people deserve for being victims,
Mhm.
for reparations, for making it up to people, right? Yeah.
Mhm. Didn't you tell me, speaking of reparations, didn't you tell me that they're thinking about reparations in San Francisco?
I need to look into that. It's been a while. I'm assuming it got shot down. I'm guessing news of reparations for all the blacks of one part of California would be kind of big news if it ever did
Mhm.
happen. But I haven't heard much about it yet. There was this whole plan that I think was going to be for the state for almost 200 something million, maybe billion. I don't
Mhm.
remember. But like the plan was to get all this money together and give it to people of color, I guess black families specifically, as reparations. Okay, well, first of all, how do you figure out who to tax for all of that? How do you figure out who is eligible to be taxed for the reparations of a
Mhm.
specific race of people in the state? How do you do that, first of all? How do you do that for all the people of color who are immigrants? People who moved in from another state and maybe or another country and have never been to California but have made a life here. And now you're saying, oh, by the way, we used to have slaves, and now we're going to collect all your taxes and give them to their families
Mhm.
because that's how bad we feel.
Yeah.
I get the point, but it's stupid. The execution and the solution is stupid. You
Was
can't do that. You can't possibly expect the whole state to figure that out without being 100% corrupt in the way that they do it, right?
so you mentioned that it's stupid, right? I'm wondering now, I'm curious. Do you believe in group guilt? Right? Like can a group be guilty of something because because solely
Historically,
because you're part
sure.
of that group?
Historically, sure. Let me give you something a bit more specific to
Uh,
me personally. Like my mom does not like Spain or Spaniards,
mhm.
not from like a race thing, but because the conquistadors, when they came to South America, the
Mhm.
Incan Empire and the natives that were in Peru, they were in those natives that were diseased and killed off by the Spanish.
Mhm.
And so today, my mom, let's say we're watching a World Cup game, right? She'll be
Mhm.
like really angry at Spain for what they did back then. And that's a good example for me because that's as far as I take it. Historically, there's animosity there. It
Sure.
makes me kind of angry that they did that. But, you know, um somebody famous from, I don't know, the kids in Spain right now, the young families in Spain,
Mhm.
they're not guilty of that. It's not their fault. Likewise here, we're talking about the sins of white people and other slave owners from the 1800s
Mhm.
and their families who now live here, their descendants who now live here. People from those slaves that fought in the Civil War and were still slaves during the war, Those families probably are still here too. But some of them fought for the other side. Do they not deserve it because they fought they fought for the side that wanted to keep slavery? There's more complications to it.
Yeah, no, that's true, but it's interesting because it's so when I was finishing my last year at UCI, these were the classes that I took, right? Like talking about group guilt, like reparations was a big thing, right? Because reparations they've been on the talks for a very long time, for like decades. Um, you know, and it's I always don't get the idea of how, like, that concept of how the sins of the father carry over to the son. I don't get that. And maybe
Unless
that's
it's our
just,
dads.
huh?
Unless it's our dads.
That's hard.
No,
No,
we love our dads.
we love our dads. We love our pops. But yeah, like why does that carry over? I don't think that that's true of anything else. Like if my dad, I don't think he ever did, but if my dad murdered someone, if your dad murdered someone, why should we feel the effects of that? Just because we're in association, right? Just because we're related to them. Right? I
And
don't
even
think that's
emotionally, the connection there is very strong, obviously, because it's your father.
Uh-huh.
But the connection between how guilty somebody should feel if their grandfather was a slave, or if their great great grandfather was a slave owner. I mean, yeah, yeah. To be honest, that really sucks that your great great grandfather did that, but
You shouldn't pay for it.
yeah, it's not your fault. Like
Yeah.
it's like you shouldn't take shit from anybody for something that you had no possible
Yeah.
um fault in, right?
Yeah. No, so you know what's interesting is that's essentially the back and forth for decades about reparations and those types of thinking. So here's my question for you. Let's say your dad or your family did something, because the argument really is you're still benefiting from that. You might not be white, Brian, but because you live in a society that values whiteness because of the color of your skin, you benefit from that, and that's why you should pay. That's the real argument. Which, by the way, I don't believe that.
I know that was just that's the woke argument.
That's the woke argument, which I don't believe, because I don't think there's a strong correlation, or there's a strong causation. Or sorry, there's a strong causation with what happened with black people in slavery, and as to why black people are, in terms of economics, right? It's mostly economics. They're in the overall aggregately, they're lower in the economic scale than some races. I don't think it's because of slavery, and there's been studies done by that. There was Are you looking?
I'm listening. I figured for our last I guess thing in February that happened, we're talking about the fault, right? Like talking about how white people born now are not guilty for the things that white people did back then. Likewise, in some cases maybe, but likewise the effects of slavery doesn't affect every black person the same way. And so to be in that group think, and I say that like generation wise, like generations later, it didn't affect every black person the same way. Not everybody's family was still a slave. Some of them grew up to be very successful people of color growing up in the US, right? Everything's different. And so I think that also throws in a wrench on the group think of like how guilty should we make white people feel for what they did all the way back then, right?
See, but what their ancestor did, not what they did.
Right.
Their ancestors, and some of these white people aren't even related to those.
But yeah, but that's what I really don't understand from the left. Like they use that example still. And another example of it was that police shooting that happened. I was like Googling it right now because I can't remember the guy's name. There was 5 police officers, all of them black, who beat one guy to death, right? Or like beat him so much that he died. And it was a classic police brutality accident, right? I forgot the name of the guy. Also want to check to make sure it was in February because I feel like I'm forgetting it.
Was it in Memphis?
Yeah, I think so.
Um, Tyree something.
Yes, Nickel, right?
Um,
Oh, that was January.
Tyree. Let's talk
We,
about it. We didn't talk
do
about it.
we didn't really talk about it, did
No,
we?
I didn't. I didn't even know this
Or
was.
we released our last episode too early in January then.
Yeah,
But anyway, this is
Tyree
another
Nichols.
case.
Uh-huh.
The police department that trained those 5 black officers is now put under fire because the police brutality against black people has seeped so from the police brutality of black people caused by white people has seeped so far in that it now affects the black people within the police ranks also, and they're also going out and beating up blacks. Like how much how much connection, how much what mental gymnastics do you have to do to be able to get to that line of reasoning and make a completely black people related incident white people's fault?
White people. See, this is the thing. It's that they have that underlying belief that black people, just can't, they're victims. And so if it's black people doing bad things to other black people, there's that underlying belief that that can't just be part of, the it can't just be a bad thing that happened, a very unfortunate thing. It has to be, oh, it's a white people type of thing affecting the minds of these black police officers.
Yeah, and do you think thankfully I would say the whole sway of defund the police that was big in 2020 from
Not that
George
big anymore.
Floyd, that's died. It's died a lot.
Okay, you notice too that a lot of these movements go in real fast. Like they
They
go
do,
in
yeah,
hard.
they do now. Remember how it's the same
Uh-huh.
thing. I remember how big a school shooting used to be, how much we used to like really feel that for a long time. Sandy Hook being like probably the biggest example. Columbine for people who are older than us, maybe.
Or
Um,
Chicago for the people that actually look at Chicago and the kids that get shot in Chicago and that have been getting shot in Chicago for decades. But we don't talk about that because they're black kids,
mhm.
right? We don't make a fuss about that because they're black kids. And that's what I don't like about woke people is that they don't want to admit the fact that school shootings have been happening in places like Chicago for the longest time. And it's
Mm.
not a white people issue.
Yeah, and that's two things, right? It's the whole problem with making it white people's fault, and then the media only selecting the selective outrage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Selecting the things that they know are going to spark conversation, but in all the woke ways.
Actually, I don't know. People have been less violent, and it seems like it's not because there's so much coverage, but people have been less violent for decades, and the crime rates are actually going down. If you look at the numbers,
They've been going up since 2020, actually.
if you look at it like from 2020 to 2020, 2023, right? Like
Yeah,
there's
if you mean from like the 70s, let's say, if you mean
yeah,
from like decades of difference, yes, they're absolutely down.
yeah. So why are we
But
making it sound like we're back in the 50s?
right,
That's my issue, right? It's
right.
like why are we making it sound like we're back in the 50s?
Mhm.
That when, one thing happens, um it's like, when a law gets passed or, someone some person of color gets shot, it's like, oh my gosh, we're back in the 50s again. But that's not really the case,
No,
right? It's
yeah.
not really the case.
I just thought of something really fucked up.
What?
You're not Emmett Till. You're not special.
TNS. That movie. I'm actually waiting for that movie to come out because that was, see, that's the thing. It's like back in the Jim Crow days, yes, it was very racist back in the Jim Crow days,
Mhm.
right? Not anymore. You know, the fact that we had a black president.
Yeah, bro. It's just there's so many giant leaps of progress
Mm-hmm.
that people just don't want to like acknowledge, or when they do, it's like, well, whatever, who cares? We still need this, and that. There's still this, and that problem. That doesn't mean anything. Just because Obama was president doesn't mean that things are all better, which is actually true,
Well,
right?
it's not. No,
Just because
yeah.
Obama was president doesn't mean everything got fixed or racism is just solved. But it's definitely not helping your case that we're still more racist than we ever been before. That
But
just doesn't make
we're
any
not.
sense.
We're not more racist, not even close to than before,
Yeah.
right? We're not. It's not even close. And the fact that people make it sound like we are, and it's just fascinating to me. It's fascinating to see Instagram posts about how the world is more racist or more dark now. I mean, I just don't get it.
Mm.
Like it's not. That's just not the reality.
Yeah, bro. You know we could talk about this all night.
Yeah,
I don't
we
want to I
can
don't want to go over too much. Let's talk about a couple more things that happened and then
talk
let's
about
wrap
Emmett
it.
Till. I'm just
No.
kidding. Don't talk about Emmett Till. Don't talk about
No.
Emmett Till.
Everyone knows Emmett Till at this point.
You know, I didn't know about Emmett Till until Dave Chappelle. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, same. And
Yeah,
then there was a Emmett Till show and then a movie, I think. I don't know.
there's a show.
Or
Jeez,
maybe it was just the movie.
yeah, I think it's the movie. Did it already come out?
I have no idea.
I need to watch it if it already came out. But
Yeah.
what else has been going on this February?
So something else that happened. Let's get a little bit more political, but only in the sense of politicians are interesting. All right.
Are you talking about Trump?
But let's talk about Trump a little bit. I wanted to start by talking about that big train derailment that happened and told you
Uh-huh.
about. I had no idea there was an East Palestine, Ohio. Shit. Hold on.
I think it's Ohio.
I remember, oh yeah, it was Ohio. I remember it being specific to Ohio because that's where Dave Chappelle lives. We're big Dave Chappelle fans. A lot of our
Dave,
things
if you
are,
hear this, please let us visit.
let me suck your dick just a little bit, just a little bit. I want to be able to tell my friends I did
Stupid.
it.
I let you suck my dick, and this is how you repay me by canceling me.
Anyway, so there was a massive train derailment in East Palestine that was carrying, I believe, chemicals and other dangerous substances. And the question of after the fire and the explosions and everything that happened from that train crashing, the people still have to live there. Is it safe? Is it okay? Like, is their drinking water contaminated? All these questions are still kind of up in the air. At least I don't know the answers to them right now. And that derailment happened. Let me look up the date real quick.
A few weeks ago, right?
It happened. Oops. Here, give me a second. Let me look it up real quick. And I promise this is leading to something.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. February 4th, North Nation that derailed was still on fire on midday February 4th. Oh, wow. February 3rd. Okay, so it happened on February 3rd, and a day later, the fires were still going. Here in California, we're kind of used to hearing that.
That's chemicals. That's chemicals. That's not
That's
regular
chemicals,
fire.
though. Yeah, here in California, we're used to hearing that, right? Because
Yeah.
the wildfires are always going in the summer. But anyway, this derailment happened over a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And only last week did they have a prominent political figure come visit their small town with aid and supplies and asking what they can do to help. And it's not who people probably expect, huh? Or maybe it
Brian,
is.
is it Biden? Is it Kamala Harris? Is it someone from the White House, Brian?
It was nobody from the White House, technically. It's a former White House resident.
Was it Barack Obama, Brian?
No, it was
Was it
not.
Jimmy Carter?
No,
Was it Bill Clinton?
probably the opposite of Barack Obama, I would say.
Was it Bill Clinton? Who was it?
Dude, Donald Trump went to visit East Palestine, Ohio before anybody else in the White House did.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that the conservative news outlets were trying to push also was that the media was not covering East Palestine, Ohio, because East Palestine, Ohio, I'm saying East Palestine, Ohio a lot. East Palestine, Ohio. It is red. They voted for Trump. They wanted Trump. It's a very Republican heavy area. A lot of blue collar workers, right? It's Ohio. What do you expect? Mm-hmm. So when Trump came, he was like a hero, right? Like people loved it that he was there. He bought like ice cream for a bunch of people, brought bottled water, Trump water, which hopefully doesn't like melt or like doesn't like turn to sand in their hand as soon as they open the cap. But the fact is he went. The fact is this was 100% easy peasy political layup for anybody that was running for president. And the fact is Donald Trump beat everybody from the White House to it.
When did they go? When did the people in the White House go? Because you mentioned they actually went, right?
The very next day.
The very next day, people in the
Like
White House went.
If Trump visited on the 27th of February, then the White House was there on the 28th.
Are you serious? Wow. So that's the see. That's the thing. It's the White House visit was very political,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it doesn't take.
Well, Donald Trump's was political for sure. Like, what's he really gonna do, right? To help East Palestine. I don't know what he in his power could do, but the fact is he
Sure.
went. The fact is his fan base is there, and they wanted him. They would, even if he had like only bottles of water and rolls of pennies to throw at all the people, right?
Mhm.
They would still celebrate him like a hero because he's the one they voted for.
Yeah. But the fact that I mean, yeah, I guess yeah, it is political, but the White House is blatantly political. It's like if it makes it seem like if Donald Trump didn't go, they would have never gone.
Yeah, yeah, and it
Right?
wasn't even Biden that went. It was Pete Buttigieg, whatever his name is.
You said Budapest. I'm like, who?
Budapest.
Budapest?
The transportation secretary for the official cabinet of the White House, I think.
So the president didn't think it was good enough
Well,
of
it
a
was a
place for him to go.
transportation related matter, right? Because it happened with the trains. The whole thing with the trains was that the brake system wasn't working. There was
Mhm.
something not up to standard, and it was a federal train. And so naturally, people thought, oh, it's some kind of transportation disaster. Maybe the Secretary of Transportation should go do something
Mhm.
about it, or at least do a visit and talk about it. And didn't do any of those things, didn't even like comment on it, kept like putting off going to visit East Palestine until Trump went. And wow, miracle. The very next day, he's like, oh yeah, I'm going too.
Mhm. Didn't okay, didn't who was Obama was during Flint, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did he visited Flint?
I
I
assume
feel
so.
I feel like natural disasters, presidents tend to visit. Like or not
Mhm.
natural disasters like that, you know. I feel like presidents would visit, you know.
That's I wouldn't not a natural disaster, right? But definitely an ecological
Yeah, I
disaster.
feel like a president, just thinking about in the past, like they typically would visit, but I guess it's not in the, it wouldn't make sense for Joe Biden to visit if, well, number one, I don't think Biden's running next year. So
I
there's not really a
he's been
point for
saying he
him.
is. He's been saying he is. Running where? Running where to? That's a good question. He's an old man, so I guess
Running to the
we'll just
grave,
follow him
dude.
and see where he goes.
He's old. Like he's old, old. Like I used to hear stories about what's his name? Reagan.
Hmm.
They thought Reagan was in the office, but it was in office, but he had like dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. Like he wasn't all there. And then I was like, I wonder what that would look like. And then I see Biden and I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. I'm like, oh, he just kind of stands there,
That's
you know?
and that presents a good question, right? If Biden couldn't run, I kind of brought this up earlier, right? If Biden couldn't run or didn't want to run, which right as of right now he's saying he will, who steps up if not Kamala Harris? Because that's kind of the easy answer, right?
Kamala is definitely gonna step up. Maybe well, you got your Reagan,
Who gives the Democrats the best chance of winning if Joe Biden did not run?
Hillary.
Hillary.
Hillary would
That would
run.
be man, that would
Hillary
be a rematch to talk about.
that I would like to see.
Yeah.
Um, Here's the thing. I'm not voting Democrat. I'm not gonna vote Democrat this year. Well, actually, no, I've never voted Democrat. People keep asking me one time. You know what? I'm gonna out this. People have asked me one time. I didn't vote in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
but I voted in 2020. I voted. No, yeah, 2020. I voted. Didn't vote in 2016, but I voted in 2020. I remember that. Yep. I remember this is how I knew it was really bad for this generation is just their beliefs about the other side was that I was on a date and when Trump won, my date started crying and she was just bawling and I was just like, I guess we're not having sex today. And I didn't know what to say because I
Sorry.
was, I was one of those people that was against Trump for the longest time and then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, well, I guess he's not, we gotta vote for someone, right? The other side was way worse, but the guy did some good things, man.
Mm-hmm.
The guy did some good things. Um, There were no wars. It's crazy.
There were
It's
no
crazy.
wars going on. The economy looked pretty good.
I mean, it's nothing to, it's not crazy to think that if you think about it, Putin invaded Georgia during Obama's time, right?
Mhm.
When Obama gets sworn in, right? A few months later, Putin invaded Georgia, right? And then when Trump was president, nothing was happening. And then Biden was president. Well, they pulled out in Afghanistan. That happened. Putin invades, Ukraine. That happened. It's interesting.
Yeah, bro. I feel like I heard so much about other world leaders like making fun of Trump or like
Mhm.
like not respecting America anymore because of Trump. And I mean, I look at our country now, and if I was a world leader in another tip, let's say China. If I was the China world leader, I would definitely be looking at the US and be laughing a little bit harder than I was in 2020
Mhm.
in 2016.
Yep. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if you know, I I wouldn't be surprised if something in that region of the world happens
Hmm.
because of
Yeah,
who
dude.
we have
I
as a sitting president.
for my not to get too much into my job, right? But if China does start fighting Taiwan, the semiconductor market is going to start looking a little bit more interesting. Just put it that way.
Because that most of it's made in China, huh?
Well, we have a lot of foundry. We have a lot of not foundries,
Factories.
factories. Yeah, manufacturers. What's another word? Just assembly. A lot of assembly
Mhm.
goes on in Taiwan for the actual chips, and thankfully, we're very diverse in how we're doing it. But yeah, geopolitical tensions are never good.
They're getting higher. They're getting higher. The tensions are pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
People are thinking that Russia's gonna launch some nukes or something. I haven't really looked into it, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Let's one more thing. Let's take a look at the Republican side of things. And then I think we can kind of close out on there because that's like the last thing I saw about political news. They had CPAC, like the conservative. Oh crap, I forgot the
It's
rest of the
CPAC already? The
CPAC just
CPAC?
happened.
Yeah. So the
Or it's
conservative
happening. I'm sorry, it's happening right now.
yeah, it's when the conservatives gather and figure out which rhino they're gonna put into the White
Yeah.
House. I get it.
But not this, no, dude, not this time. Not this time. So CPAC is going from oh, and it already went. It was from March 1st to March 4th.
Who was there? Do you have the guest speakers? Shapiro
That's
gotta
what I
be
wanted
there.
to point out. It was like Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, and almost no prominent rhinos slash Republicans who are currently in Congress right now. Oh, Matt
Mm,
Gaetz. So
interesting.
besides like the typical besides the usual suspects, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Nobody else, no other conservatives went to CPAC, and they showed videos like Forbes showed videos of the convention center being like halfway full for pretty
Mhm.
much every other speaker that wasn't Trump. A lot of Trump supporters for sure, but this just goes to show, just like in how the Democrats don't seem to be fully together with who is like in the next in line for presidency, for succession and all that. It's pretty clear that Trump is like the leader of the Republican Party right now, but the division you see between the Republicans in Congress and the Republicans who are still trying to make the stand, still trying to make a voice for themselves, it's very very clear. We talked about this not that long ago, that as frustrating as the left and Democrats can be, they know how to win elections. And a divided party, the way the Republican Party is right now,
Does not
is
win elections.
unlikely to win in the next election.
They're not.
Unless, who knows? Who knows what could happen? Obama comes back, but he's actually a big Trump supporter.
Can you imagine Obama just all of a sudden switching sides? Oh my God.
That'd be crazy.
There's no such thing as Black Americans or white Americans or Asian Americans, just Americans. And we
Ah,
should be under the banner red. Ah! Dude, I would go nuts, man. I would go bananas if Obama became president. We need an Obama. We need an
Obama,
Obama.
Obama can't be president again, though.
Oh, because he's yeah. But we
Yeah.
need an Obama. We need a conservative leader that has the name Hussein in it.
Presenting Mr. Hussein Smith.
Hussein Ahmadinejad Smith. What? I would go insane, dude. Because that's, it's interesting because that's what that's essentially where we're at. We got who's the token person of color that we can put to be the face, which is sad, but that's the world.
Yeah.
There's the politics that we play, man.
Yeah, even we might need a token white in this group at some point. It's starting to get a little too brown in here.
Hey, you can run for president. I can't. That's crazy. I cannot run for president. I wasn't born here.
I haven't renewed my ID yet, so give me a couple of weeks and then
I finally renewed mine.
Really?
Thank God.
You have the real ID?
I don't have the real ID.
Then you can't fly. Why not? Then you can't fly.
What do you mean I can't fly?
Well, okay, you can fly, but you need your passport.
I
If
need
you
my
want to do
passport.
domestic flights, you have the real ID. That's all you need now.
Yeah, but I just renewed my passport too. I paid like $500 for it.
I don't know, dude. It was that whole process of the real ID was so frustrating. Anyway, this was fun. Before we get on too big of a tangent, I just want to say feels great. Feels great to be back.
This will air sometime in the next couple days. I promise you.
Yes, it will.
All right, hey, that was fun. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, next time will be probably end of March, sometime in April. We'll see. More interesting stuff will happen.
We need to see the folks again in March. We should have an outro song. Ding 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 ding.
NJ, I'll give you a hint. There's a lot of things we need to make for this show. There's a full intro song, graphics. Like I want to animate a lot of stuff in your hands right now to make it look like
is this how they do guitar? Because I don't actually play guitar.
Before we forget, don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us a follow. I'm not even gonna bother pointing because we never put the show on anyway.
See you guys later.
See you guys.